The cold seeped away slowly. General Han Jiwoo's consciousness returned in fragments. First sound, then sensation, finally sight. Her eyelids felt impossibly heavy as she forced them open. A blurry ceiling came into focus, sleek and metallic, nothing like the military bunker where she'd entered cryosleep. "Vital signs stabilizing," said a voice she didn't recognize. "Cognitive functions returning to baseline." Jiwoo tried to speak, but her throat burned with disuse. A device pressed against her neck, and suddenly the pain subsided. "General Han," said a tall man with strange silver implants at his temples. "I'm Director Kang. Welcome to the year 12,183, 10,000 years." The number struck her like a physical blow. Everyone she had ever known was dust. Earth itself might be unrecognizable, if it still existed at all. "Why?" she managed to ask, her voice raspy despite the medical intervention. Director Kang's expression grew grim. "Humanity needs you. More precisely, the Galactic Concordat needs you." Two medical attendants helped Jiwoo sit up. Her muscles trembled with the effort. Through a viewport, she saw stars in unfamiliar patterns and the curved hull of what must be an enormous spacecraft. "Where am I?" she asked. "The Concordat command vessel Everlight. We're currently in orbit around Proxima Centauri b, the closest human colony to your original Earth." Jiwoo's military mind immediately began cataloging information. Humans had colonized other star systems. They were part of something called the Galactic Concordat, and they had revived her for a purpose. "You said the Concordat needs me," she said, stronger now. "Explain." Director Kang gestured, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed various alien species, some insectoid, others crystalline, one resembling a sentient gas cloud. The Galactic Concordat unites 7 intelligent species, including humans. For 3 centuries, we've built a peaceful coalition spanning thousands of star systems. His face darkened. But now we face extinction. The hologram shifted to show a dark, writhing mass consuming a planet. Jiwoo flinched involuntarily. "The void hegemony," Kang continued. "A hive mind species that consumes all sentient life in its path. They've destroyed 18 Concordat worlds already. We've lost 38 consecutive battles. And you think I can help? After 10,000 years?" Jiwoo asked skeptically. A new figure entered the room, a woman in a military uniform unlike any Jiwoo had seen before. She saluted crisply. "General Han, I'm Admiral Yoon, and yes, we believe you can help us win this war." Yoon approached the bed, her movements confident and measured. "Humans are a minor power in the Concordat. Our technological contributions are respected but modest. Our physical attributes are unexceptional compared to other species. But we possess something unique, a history of warfare unlike anything else in the galaxy." Jiwoo considered this. "The other species evolved without significant intra-species conflict," Yoon finished. "The Dova achieved space travel before they had their first war. The Thakari resolved conflicts through ritual combat between champions. None of them understand strategy the way humans do." "And you chose me specifically?" Jiwoo asked. Director Kang nodded. "Your military campaigns during the resource wars were studied for millennia. Your preservation was originally a contingency plan if Earth faced extinction. Instead, we're reviving you because your strategic mind may be our only hope." A medical technician approached with what appeared to be clothing. "General, if you feel ready, the Concordat Council awaits." Jiwoo's legs nearly buckled when she stood. Muscle atrophy, despite whatever treatments they'd given her during revival. She steeled herself against the weakness. "I need to know more before I meet this council," she said firmly. "Tactical details, force compositions, enemy capabilities." "Admiral," Yoon smiled slightly. "Already thinking like a general. That's why we need you." As attendants helped her dress in an unfamiliar uniform bearing both human and alien insignia, Jiwoo processed her new reality. She had been awakened to fight an interstellar war against an enemy beyond her comprehension, commanding forces including alien species with fundamentally different understandings of conflict. Hours later, she stood before the entrance to the council chamber. 7 massive doors, each bearing the symbol of a different species. Admiral Yoon beside her, Director Kang behind. "They call you the Frost Titan," Yoon said quietly. "They've studied your campaigns extensively." The doors slid open. 7 alien Supreme Commanders towered physically over the human general, but fell silent at her approach. Jiwoo squared her shoulders and stepped forward to meet her impossible new fate. General Han Jiwoo sat motionless before a large holographic display, watching battle recordings for the 5th consecutive hour. The footage showed massive Concordat warships, technologically superior in every way, being systematically outmaneuvered by the dark, organic vessels of the Void hegemony. She paused the recording and rubbed her temples. "They fight like children," she muttered to herself. The door hissed open as Admiral Yoon entered with Commander Min, a tall, blue-skinned alien whose species Jiwoo now knew were called the El Hori. "General Han, how is your review progressing?" Yoon asked. Jiwoo gestured at the frozen battle scene. "Your forces fight with mathematical precision but no creativity. The Concordat deploys in textbook formations and never deviates, even when those formations fail. The hegemony adapts. You don't." Commander Min's facial tendrils twitched in what Jiwoo had learned was discomfort. "Our combat algorithms are the product of our finest minds. They optimize for minimal losses while maximizing damage output." "And yet you've lost 38 battles," Jiwoo said bluntly. "Your algorithms are predictable. War isn't a math problem." She stood and walked to a different console. Her muscles still ached from her long sleep, but she moved with increasing confidence each day. She pulled up historical records of Earth conflicts. In human history, we learned that deception, sacrifice, and unpredictability were essential to victory. The general who appears weak when strong, who baits the enemy into traps, who accepts tactical losses for strategic gains, that general wins. Admiral Yoon nodded slowly. "These concepts are difficult for many Concordat species. The Dova evolved as herd animals with collective decision-making. The Thakari are basically immortal unless killed in battle. Different evolutionary paths led to different approaches to conflict." Jiwoo activated a simulation program and quickly programmed a basic scenario. "Watch this." The hologram showed 2 opposing forces. Jiwoo directed her simulated fleet to appear to retreat in disorder, drawing the enemy into pursuit. Then hidden flanking elements closed a trap, surrounding and destroying the pursuers. Commander Min's eyes widened. "You deliberately appeared vulnerable. You sacrificed units as bait, a feint, a basic military tactic humans developed thousands of years ago." Jiwoo programmed another simulation, this time showing a force dividing the enemy's attention with multiple simultaneous attacks. Divide and conquer. Force your enemy to split their focus. Min's skin darkened with emotional distress. But the units in the diversionary attack, they have a higher probability of destruction. Yes, they likely die, so others may live and achieve victory. The alien commander was silent for several moments. "This is why we need you. We cannot think this way." Jiwoo turned to Admiral Yoon. "I need to meet all the Concordat military leaders, and I need to see your troops in training. Book exercises won't win this war." 3 days later, Jiwoo stood in an enormous observation chamber overlooking a training arena. Representatives from all 7 Concordat species gathered around her: the crystalline Dova, the massive insectoid Thakari, the gaseous Marin contained in hovering environmental suits, and others. "Today," Jiwoo announced, "we will run a simple exercise. I will command one force. Grand Admiral Tay will command the opposing force following standard Concordat protocols." The alien commanders watched with fascination as the exercise unfolded. Using deliberately antiquated tactics from Earth's history, a modified version of the Hannibal strategy at Cannae, Jiwoo's numerically inferior force encircled and destroyed Tay's larger force. "Impossible," whispered a Thakari commander, its mandibles clicking in agitation. "The statistical models are worthless against an enemy that doesn't play by your rules, Jiwoo finished. She walked to the center of the room, commanding attention despite being physically smaller than most present. Your species evolved without the constant warfare that shaped humanity. What you see as barbaric, we refined into art. I cannot make you think like humans overnight, but I can teach you enough to survive. Admiral Yoon stepped forward. What do you propose, General? A new academy, mixed species training. We have little time before the hegemony strikes again. I need your best officers, those most willing to think differently. As the assembled leaders debated her proposal, Jiwoo watched them carefully. Some were clearly resistant, others intrigued. The fate of 7 civilizations might depend on whether these aliens could learn to think like human warriors. There's one more thing you should know, Jiwoo said quietly to Yoon as the others talked. The Void Hegemony. I've studied their attack patterns. They're learning, adapting. Whatever they are, they think more like us than like your people. That's why they're winning. Yoon's face paled slightly. Then we must learn faster than they do. Space Station Nexus 7 hummed with activity. The massive structure, positioned at a neutral point between concordant territories, now served as General Hanjiwoo's military academy. Training facilities filled entire decks, modified to accommodate the diverse physiologies of 7 different species. In the central command hall, Jiwoo stood before a mixed group of officers from across the concordate. Again, she ordered firmly. The game officers manipulated holographic controls, repositioning their simulated fleets. The Thakari commander, Officer Song, chittered in frustration as his massive dreadnoughts moved into position. This formation leaves our center vulnerable, Song protested. The probability of central line collapse is 87.3%. Yes, Jiwoo replied calmly. That's the point. For 3 weeks, she had been drilling them in tactics alien to their nature. The training was physically demanding for the humans whose bodies had grown soft over millennia of technological comfort. It was conceptually excruciating for the aliens, who struggled with primitive concepts like deliberate misdirection and sacrificial maneuvers. Collapse your center, Jiwoo instructed. Draw them in. Make them think they're winning. The training room door slid open. Representative Park from the Elshani Imperium entered, his silver skin reflecting the holographic displays. Unlike the military officers, Park wore ceremonial robes indicating his diplomatic status. General Han, he greeted, with forced politeness. The Elshani Council requests an update on your unconventional training methods. Jiwoo didn't look away from the simulation. They'll get their update when we have results. Park's tone hardened. The Elshani have led concordant military doctrine for 8 centuries. Our technological advantage hasn't won you a single battle against the hegemony, Jiwoo interrupted. The room fell silent. Even the alien officers who struggled most with human concepts understood the tension. Park's voice was cold. Some factions question whether an ancient human savage should command our combined forces. Jiwoo finally turned to face him. Then those factions should start winning battles. After Park departed, Jiwoo reset the simulation. Let's try something different. We'll recreate a historical Earth battle, Cannae, where Hannibal defeated a much larger Roman force through encirclement. She quickly programmed the parameters. The officers watched as 2 ancient armies faced each other, one significantly outnumbering the other. Hannibal's center collapsed deliberately, Jiwoo explained. The Romans, sensing victory, pushed forward until, on the display, the larger army surged into the collapsing center, only to be surrounded as the flanks closed. In like a trap. The Roman army was encircled and destroyed. Officer Choi, a crystalline dova, emitted pulses of light indicating intense thought. The center was meant to fail? Yes, Jiwoo confirmed. Appearing weak where you are strong is the essence of deception. Something shifted in the room. For weeks, these alien officers had been struggling to grasp concepts that seemed instinctive to any human soldier. But watching this ancient battle unfold, understanding began to dawn. We could adapt. This, suggested Commander Moon, a human officer, The hegemony expects us to protect our command ships at all costs. What if instead we use them as bait? Finished Choi, crystal facets glittering with excitement. My people can generate false sensor readings to make damaged ships appear more vulnerable than they are. One by one, the officers began to contribute ideas, combining human tactical concepts with their species' unique abilities. The insectoid Thakari suggested using their natural armor for close engagements. The gaseous Marin proposed communication deceptions that would confuse the hegemony's hive mind. Jiwoo watched in silence as her students began to think like warriors rather than mathematical optimizers. This was the transformation she had hoped. For later that night, as Jiwoo reviewed battle simulations in her quarters, Admiral Yoon arrived with troubling news. Our intelligence network reports the Void Hegemony has detected unusual activity around Nexus 7, Yoon said gravely. They're redirecting forces in this direction. Jiwoo studied the intelligence report. How long? 2 weeks, maybe less. Jiwoo's expression remained calm, but her mind raced. Her officers were showing promise, but they were still half-trained. The tactics they were developing remained untested in actual combat. We need to accelerate the program, she decided. Double training, shifts, full battle simulations. The officers are already at their limits, Yoon cautioned. War won't wait for them to be ready, Jiwoo replied. Neither will the hegemony. As Admiral Yoon departed, Jiwoo returned to the holographic display showing the approaching enemy fleet. 10,000 years ago, she had commanded armies on a single planet. Now she prepared to face an enemy that consumed entire worlds, with officers from species that evolved on different stars. Yet in this moment, she felt strangely at home. War, it seemed, remained fundamentally unchanged across the millennia. The Void Hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kang system. Massive organic vessels, resembling dark twisted creatures, moved with eerie coordination toward the fourth planet. Intelligence had reported rich mineral deposits there, resources the ever-expanding hegemony craved. They expected minimal resistance. The patterns were predictable. The Concordat would position defensive formations at optimal mathematical distances, protecting population centers while attempting to minimize losses. What they found instead shocked them. General Han Jiwoo stood on the command deck of the Concordat flagship Dauntless, watching tactical displays track enemy movements. Around her, officers from 7 different species operated their stations with newfound confidence. They had trained relentlessly for this moment. The hegemony fleet has detected our forward elements, reported Commander Shin, a human tactical officer. They're adjusting course exactly as predicted. Jiwoo nodded calmly. Begin Phase 1. Across the Kang system, the Concordat fleet executed movements that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. Instead of forming a defensive wall, the crystalline Dova ships scattered in apparent disorder, their natural reflective properties, creating sensor ghosts that confused enemy targeting systems. Meanwhile, the massive Thakari dreadnoughts that typically fought from a distance moved aggressively forward, closing to ranges where their natural armor gave them advantage. The hegemony command node is redirecting interceptors, Shin announced, excitement evident in his voice. They're responding to our false signals. On the tactical display, the enemy fleet divided its attention, chasing sensor ghosts and reacting to apparent vulnerabilities. For the first time in 38 battles, the Void Hegemony seemed uncertain. They're adapting faster than expected, Admiral Yoon warned, monitoring communications from her station. Their hive mind is beginning to recognize the deception. Jiwoo had anticipated this. Begin Phase 2. Execute the Han Gambit. The center of the Concordat formation suddenly appeared to collapse under hegemony pressure. Ships sent distress signals, carefully crafted falsehoods designed to suggest panic and system failures. The hegemony command node, sensing weakness, committed its reserves to exploit the apparent breakdown. They've taken the bait, Shin reported. Hegemony forces are fully committed to the center push. Jiwoo allowed herself a small smile. Spring the trap. Hidden at the edges of the Kang system's asteroid belt, concealed Concordat strike forces powered up their engines and converged on the exposed flanks of the hegemony fleet. Meanwhile, the supposedly crippled ships in the center suddenly restored power and reversed course, trapping the enemy in a three-dimensional encirclement. All units execute final attack pattern, Jiwoo ordered. For 3 intense hours, the battle raged across the Kang system. The hegemony forces fought with increasing desperation as their hive minds struggled to compute effective responses to tactics it had never encountered. The concordate forces executed their roles with precision born of harsh training. The Marin jamming communications, the Thakari engaging at close range, the humans providing tactical flexibility. When the hegemony command node finally attempted retreat, Jiwoo was ready. A small, fast attack group led by Commander Jin had been positioned precisely for this moment. They struck the command node with concentrated fire, disrupting the hive mind's coordination. Without central direction, the remaining hegemony ships fell into disarray and were methodically eliminated. As the final enemy vessels were destroyed, a strange silence fell over the dauntless command deck. Then, gradually, realization dawned. They had won. The first concordate victory in 39 engagements. Cheers erupted across communication channels. Species that had evolved on different worlds united in celebration. Admiral Yoon approached Jiwoo, face flushed with victory. "Your strategy worked perfectly, General." Jiwoo's expression remained somber as she studied the casualty reports. "We lost nearly a third of our fleet." "But we won," Yoon countered. "For the first time we proved the hegemony can be defeated." Around the command deck, the celebrations began to subside as officers received the same casualty reports. For species unaccustomed to warfare, the cost of victory seemed almost as devastating as defeat. "This is merely the beginning," Jiwoo told them, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet deck. "The hegemony will adapt to these tactics. Our next victory will require even greater sacrifice." The officers exchanged glances, some determined, others uncertain. "They need to understand," Jiwoo said privately to Yoon as they watched the aftermath of battle on the main display. "This isn't a single battle, it's a war for survival." Yoon nodded slowly. "They're learning what humans have always known." "Yes," Jiwoo agreed, watching stars shine through the wreckage of destroyed ships. "That victory always has a price." The battle for Helios Nexus had gone terribly wrong. What should have been another victory for the Concordate had turned into a desperate fight for survival. General Han Jiwoo stood on the shattered bridge of the flagship Dauntless, emergency lighting casting harsh shadows across her face. Around her, damage reports flooded in as crew members fought to keep critical systems online. 3 more fleet groups have broken formation and are retreating, Officer Gill reported, his voice tight with tension. Thakari Battle Group 7 has also withdrawn. Jiwoo's expression darkened. After 6 successful engagements using her tactics, the war had seemed to turn in their favor. But the victories had come at steep costs, costs that several species now refused to bear. The Elshani and Marin representatives signed non-aggression pacts with the hegemony, Admiral Yoon explained, joining Jiwoo at the tactical display. They agreed to sacrifice the Helios Nexus to save their own homeworlds. "Betrayal," Jiwoo said quietly. Her eyes scanned the battle situation. The Void Hegemony forces had encircled the remaining loyal Concordate ships, outnumbered 3-1. With no reinforcements coming, standard military doctrine dictated only one option: retreat. But retreat would mean abandoning Helios Nexus, a strategic junction connecting 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. If it fell, dozens more systems would be defenseless. "Order all remaining ships to form escape corridors," Commander Ryu suggested. "We can save at least 60% of our forces if we withdraw now." Jiwoo stared at the tactical display. Something stirred within her. Not just the calculated strategy that had served her for decades of warfare on ancient Earth, but something deeper, more human. "No," she said firmly. The bridge fell silent. "General?" Yoon questioned. Jiwoo straightened, her uniform. "Open a channel to all remaining Concordate vessels." The communications officer complied, confusion evident on his face. What could the general possibly say that would change their desperate situation? "This is General Han Jiwoo," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. 10,000 years ago, I fought in humanity's darkest hours. I learned then what I must remind you of now. Around the Helios Nexus, on ships of different designs crewed by beings of different biologies, soldiers and officers paused to listen. Technology does not win wars. Tactics do not win wars. Numbers do not win wars, Jiwoo continued. The will to fight, to stand when logic says run, that is what wins wars. That is the human element your leaders awakened when they thawed me from the ice. She paused as an explosion rocked the Dauntless. Some of your leaders have abandoned you, believing survival requires surrender. They are wrong. Stand and fight, not for your worlds, but for all worlds. Jiwoo nodded to the navigation officer. Set course directly for the hegemony command node. All weapons, full power. Admiral Yoon stared at her in shock. That's suicide. That's humanity, Jiwoo replied simply. The Dauntless surged forward, breaking formation and charging toward the heart of the enemy fleet. For several moments it flew alone. Then one by one, the remaining concordate ships followed. Across communication channels, voices from 7 species echoed the same sentiment. For all worlds, the hegemony forces, unprepared for such an irrational attack, struggled to reorganize their formations. Their coordinated defense faltered against the sheer ferocity of the charge. As the Dauntless took devastating hits, Jiwoo held the bridge railing with white knuckles. Stay on course. The impossible happened as they closed on the hegemony command node. Ships previously reported as retreating suddenly reappeared, striking the hegemony from behind. The Thakari Battle Group 7, the Elshani Defense Fleet, even the gaseous Marin vessels returned, ashamed by the courage of their allies. When the battle ended hours later, the Void hegemony retreated in disarray, its hive-mind coordination severely damaged. The cost had been enormous, but the Helios Nexus remained free. 10 years later, General Han Jiwoo, now aged and decorated with honors from 7 grateful species, walked slowly through the halls of the newly established military academy. Her hair had turned gray, her face lined with the weight of countless decisions, but her eyes remained sharp as she watched the graduating class, a mix of all concordate species training together. At the center of the academy's main hall stood a simple plaque written in 8 languages. It bore the human phrase that had become the concordate's motto: victory not through strength alone but through the will to endure.